Hello, and welcome to HBO's Succession, the analysis of a toxic family system, with Mandy Friedman, licensed professional clinical counsellor, and Andrew, her brother.
Hello, Mandy Friedman here, licensed professional clinical counselor, clinically certified domestic violence counselor, clinically certified trauma professional level 2, and the creator of SNAP, Survivors of Narcissistic and Abusive Personalities. We are back talking about season 3 of Succession, the HBO series, and I'm here with my brother Andrew. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Mandy. We're back again to talk about yet another of Logan's children in the show Succession, and we're going to talk about his number one boy. Not Kendall. It's Connor.
Connor is the oldest child, in case you didn't know that. He's the oldest.
Correct. And he has a different mother than the other 3 children. So that doesn't really come up in the season, but it's important to know. When we last left Connor at the end of season 2, he had attempted to get a bridge loan, just trying to get from here to there, from Logan. And Logan wasn't very nice about it.
He was not. He was rather mean and said some nasty things. He said about the presidential ideas that Connor has. It's a horseshit pipe dream. Everyone thinks you're a joke and you're fucking embarrassing me. And I have bigger fish to fry. Pull the plug on it where you're not doing it. And he just leaves him at that. And that's where we end with season 2.
At the beginning of season 3, Connor has been holding down the fort. He's not involved in the day-to-day operations of the family's business, of course. But we're at a different part of the cycle now. So now Logan is in trouble because of all this cruise ship debacle. And so now he needs the wagon circled. So he reels Connor back in. But there's no harm done, right, Mandy?
No harm done. When Connor shows up, he immediately is complaining that he had to take a regular scheduled flight. So he had to fly like a normal person. He did not like that.
Big sacrifice,
And when Logan actually calls him to reel him back in, he knows exactly how to talk to Connor, to say all the right things, to make him forget about the nasty things that he said. He says, no harm done. Right? And then Connor is honest with him actually and says, you were rude, Pop. Whoa. Connor's the only one that really seems like that he's not afraid of Logan. He's really there just to be a part of things and to get things out of it. But he doesn't need Logan's approval, not deep down, not like the other kids anyway. So Logan is basically love bombing Connor to reel him back in. And one of the things that he instructs him is, no one speaks to him, right? And he's talking about Kendall. In other words, we're circling the wagons against Kendall, so no one's speaking to him. And then he says, you're my number one, kiddo.
Connor, in this conversation with Logan, he's realizing that Logan's down. Well, I'm going to kick him while he's down, he thinks. He has a play, so he decides he wants to make this play. He's not just going to play ball without getting his piece of the pie. He has some interesting things to say to Shiv about his juice and how he can use it.
He tells Shiv, I don't like having my boot on the old man's throat, but I do. I got me some juice. At any time I want, I can pull out the old megaphone and say, guess what? My father was a nasty, racist, neglectful individual. What is it they used to say around here? No blacks, no Jews, and no women above the 4th floor. He says that Shiv working at Waystar is like her playing post office as a little girl, and that he would prefer to negotiate with an actual decision maker.
Wow. So here's the thing about that, though, is that Connor, what he's doing is he's communicating in the love language that this family communicates with.
And that is to leverage, be strategic, control the narrative, manipulate, and get what you can by, coercively controlling as much as possible other people and holding things over them. I mean, this is how they operate. So in a way, the way he's entering into this will possibly get some respect. There's a possibility that's like, okay, well, Connor seems like he's playing the game now, so maybe he is a player.
So Connor's at the Waystar office, right? And this is when he threatens to go public.
again, he reminds Shiv of the leverage that he has. He says, "Where's Dad? I want to spitball with him." And she says, "It's not a good time." Connor says, "Well, he better make it a good time unless he wants me to go public and take a big black light to our semen-stained family scrapbook." So he keeps throwing this out there that he's going to make the situation worse. That it's already a bad situation. All he has to do is open his mouth, and it could get a lot worse if you don't do what I want you to do. Where did he learn that from? But Connor forces a conversation with Logan at this point, even though Logan's not interested in talking to him. Again, he's using these tools, so somehow Logan agrees to talk. Connor tells Logan he wants to be involved in the family business. Logan's like, "But you've never been interested." And then Connor says, "Maybe it's because I wasn't encouraged." And Logan says, "I don't do ancient history." Now, this is a really good example of how narcissists and narcissistic family systems, narcissistic organizations refuse to examine the past, ancient history. You can learn from history. You can learn from examining things in history, right? And including in relationships is you can go back and remember things and then grow and examine them and get closer because you were able to process something from the past together. Now, if you're the one who's being abused and you want to discuss something from the past, the abuser will say, "I don't do ancient history. You're just living in the past. You're just digging up the past. She can't get over it. It was 2 years ago and she can't get over it." It's like she just hangs on to the negative. And they have this way of mischaracterizing a perfectly reasonable human desire to recap something that affected you deeply and it bothered you and it hurt you. It's okay to talk about that with someone. And if they can't talk about it with you, it might mean that you're not really in that great of a relationship with that person.
Well, at a minimum, you're probably being manipulated. That's kind of what's going on here.
We don't want to dredge up the past. So Connor, all he said was, "Maybe I wasn't encouraged," which is a very broad general statement, but Logan knows exactly what he's saying. In other words, you abandoned me. You neglected me. You acted like I didn't exist. You ignored me. So how was I supposed to be a part of the family business when nobody even knew I was around? And instead of Logan saying, "You know what, you're right. I did not give you enough attention when I was younger and I was doing what I was doing. And so, yeah, I could see why you would not have been interested in the family business," and take ownership of the fact that he completely abandoned Connor, but he can't do ancient history.
Do you think that Logan realizes in this moment, and I mean, he may have always known this about Connor, is that he doesn't have to really give Connor anything? You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like just being around physically around him is enough, enough of something he's giving Connor, a little bit of his time. That's enough. He doesn't have to give him anything else because Connor's just kind of gonna take the punches and just roll with it anyway.
He recognizes that Logan does need him for something, and it's to complete that glossy photo. When they are there at that Future Freedom Summit with Mencken and everybody's supposed to get together for the picture, the photo op on the tarmac where Roman shows up and they do the fake, punching thing, all of it has to do with the glossy photo so that things look a certain way from the outside. And that's what he needs Connor for, is to make it look like that they're a big happy family and that everything's fine.
Well, speaking of the Future Freedom Summit, aka Nazi rally, the term conheads is coined at this rally. And there are a few people there that are actually conheads. Mandy, what does that tell us about the place that they are? The fact that there are people there that support Connor for president.
So these are the movers and the shakers. They are selecting the next Republican candidate for president at this event with a bunch of rich people. And among them are people that think that it would be a good idea for Connor to be president. And if that doesn't tell you something about that room full of people, that would be an idea that they would have. I mean,
the only thing they know about him is that he doesn't want to pay his taxes, and that's all they care about, right? Which is kind of what it boils down to a lot of times. So.
Exactly, is that he is like them.
Mm-hmm.
So he will create policy that benefits them. So they see him as a peer, and they want someone in the White House that's going to make their bank accounts get bigger, and maybe they can have more than one yacht. Because one isn't enough, you know.
No, I mean, the poor guy had to fly on a commercial flight to get to this. This is just... Tell us a little bit about Willa's past, Mandy, and how that could possibly affect Connor's campaign.
In my notes, I just realized something important, which is I wrote that word gets around that Willa is/was a sex worker. It could be argued that she still is.
Oh, certainly, yes.
Anyhow, not a very important point. But however Willa chooses to live her life, make money, to get to where she wants to go is Willa's business, right? She can do what she wants to do. Connor's running for president, and there will be many transactions that take place to get somebody into a position like that, right? And Willa being known as a sex worker is going to be a problem. It's going to come up. I don't know if you remember that scene in Pretty Woman where George from Seinfeld is the best friend of Richard Gere, mm-hmm. and he knows that Julia Roberts is a sex worker. So he basically shows up and tries to assault Julia Roberts, and assuming that because she's a sex worker that she should just service him. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially what's going on right here with Willa. That the knowledge that she's a sex worker makes her very approachable to these creepy men. And one of the bigger creepers, played by Stephen Root, comes and sits down right next to her. And Connor is right there too on this couch. But Stephen Root in this scene is being very creepy and gross and making comments and like leering at her in this sexual way. And she's just kind of nervously sitting there like, okay, I guess this is happening. But at a certain point, he makes a joke. They're talking about her being a playwright and, you know, that she wrote a play. And he says, beauty and brains. And then he goes, uh-oh, am I allowed to say that? Am I going to get canceled? And at one point, he calls her a gorgeous creature. And then Connor jokingly says, canceled. And then they all laugh. Okay, so we got to untangle this here. Connor is objectifying his partner, Willa, who was a sex worker, is objectifying her and is using her in a transactional way to gain favor with potential donors. And these are the ones that were using the word conhead. So he's willing to put her in this position if it's going to get him where he needs to go. Okay, so that's happening. Simultaneously, you have a man who's doing the exact thing that he's claiming doesn't exist. When he says, basically, you can't even compliment a woman anymore. You can't even say anything to women anymore without getting canceled. This whole Me Too thing has gone too far. You know, men just can't be men and women just can't be women. And so I can't even say beauty and brains, like that it's that bad. No, but maybe you could say beauty and brains, but you wouldn't sit next to her on the couch leering at her, making gross comments and making her feel objectified. Like you're doing the thing right now in this moment and you can't even see it right in front of your face. So that's what makes this such a great example of narcissistic abuse, because you have gaslighting going on. You got objectification, you got transactions, and everyone is just jockeying to try to get what they want. And in the middle of this is Willa trying to do what is going to work best for her and figuring that out for herself. After, things sort of dissipate, she says to Connor, do not abandon me like that. And Connor says, he's influential. We're just showing a bit of leg, he says. And she says, yeah, my leg. And he says, the collective leg. So your body belongs to me to be used. So he's kind of, if she's a sex worker and he's basically saying, hey, feel free to creep on my partner here, that puts him in a position of pimping her out essentially and using
ownership
for his own gains. And she says, maybe I don't want to donate my body to political science, huh? And she sort of does seem like she's setting this boundary with him that this is not going to be okay with her.
We don't give Willa enough props as an actor. She's tremendous in her like meek ways that she reacts to these things without going big. She goes small in all of her acting, and it's fantastic because she can't go big because she's trapped, So, and it looks like that she's going to maybe be trapped further as we continue to talk about what happens with Connor this season, most of which revolves around Willa. But at Caroline's wedding, Connor approaches Willa about plans for the future, and he wants to make a life decision based on if it might help his campaign, maybe a little.
He approaches Willa, and he's saying that he needs to have a difficult conversation. And you can tell that she thinks she knows where this is going. He's saying that he needs to plan for the event that he might actually gain traction with his aspirations to be president. He needs to plan ahead for that. And and so she's thinking that he's about to break up with her, and because that she might actually hurt his chances at becoming president. She seems perfectly happy with this. She's like, okay, all right, I'll live in the city and you can come and visit sometimes. She is thrilled with this, not a problem. And Connor says that his campaign advisor had a really good idea. And then he gets down on one knee. Willa is very surprised by this, and she looks way less happy than she did a minute ago when she said she could just visit with him sometimes. Now she's not looking as happy with the introduction of a proposal. Down on one knee, he says to her, will you make me the most happiest man / most bulletproof candidate in the world?
It's all wrapped up together. And this is the same thing as with all the other people in this show. We've talked about it a lot. It's just when Connor does it, it seems a little more innocent and a little less abusive, but it's just as abusive. And situations where a man goes down on one knee and there's an audience can be a little manipulative, actually.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. When someone is surprised by an engagement, a proposal, and there's an audience, and this man is putting himself out there, in front of people. And women, we are raised that we're supposed to help men save face. We're supposed to make that all okay somehow and not hurt his feelings. We're also supposed to follow a social script. And in that script, we say yes, and everyone claps. And it's wonderful, but there's a lot of pressure on that person who's being asked if they would enter into matrimony. When there's an audience, it's a surprise, they weren't expecting it. And to me, that has a little bit of a red flag, because I feel like there's a little bit of pressure involved in the decision being made. And we don't want to feel pressured in that moment ever to make a big decision like that. Her face falls and she's not happy. And what does he say? He said, people are watching. He says it. People are watching. So what she does is she sort of acts, and then he says to her, I'm smiling now like you said yes. So they're pantomiming that the moment went well and that she said yes, even though she's saying no, to help him save face, because people are watching.
And because she might need to think about it, which is not very romantic, honestly.
Yeah, so she still hasn't answered as of the next day. And she says, I'm going to think about it, since this is actually a big, huge life decision. And he says, yeah, just this much thinking could start to get unromantic. As if it was romantic to begin with.
The last thing we're going to talk about on this episode is our Kendall intervention situation that happens late in season 3. Connor kind of loses it a little bit and throws his temper tantrum. And what did you just mention about men saving face? Willa tries to save his face.
She does. Yeah, so they're having this little intervention thing with Kendall. He had that moment in the pool where he might have drowned and he didn't. And so they just feel like maybe he's, has some suicidal tendencies, and they should, I don't know, just be basic human beings and show some sort of affection towards him. So they sit down and basically say, we love you, get your shit together, you're embarrassing us. They're kind of doing several things at one time in this little intervention, but at a certain point, it is mentioned that Kendall is the oldest, the next in the line of succession, and this upsets Connor. And at one point, he has a butter knife, and he is declaring over and over again that he is the eldest son. He is the eldest son. I am the oldest. I am the oldest son. I am the firstborn son. And it's kind of sad. And, you know, he gets down after this, and Willa sees that he's down, and she's wanting to defend him and feels bad for him. And she's like, you know what? Fuck it. Fuck it. He's like, what do you mean, fuck it? She's like, fuck it. How bad could it be? Marrying him. So, you know, she felt that pressure. Say yes, everyone's watching. She's like, oh, I don't like this pressure. But now she sees that, you know, she does have some power in the situation, and that even just making Connor feel better about himself gives her some sort of purpose, perhaps. I don't know. But she says, fuck it. Now, once it's established that that means yes, immediately her face changes. You can tell she's already regretting her decision. They're getting into the limo that's taking them from one, you know, mansion to another mansion for this wedding ceremony. And in one location, she says, fuck it, meaning yes. During the car ride, her face falls. She's already regretting it. We go to the second location, which is the ceremony, and she's already crying. But it looks like she could just be crying because she's at a wedding, but she's already crying like as the wedding is getting going. And you can tell she's crying because it's sinking in right now what she just agreed to.
Poor Willow. But she was trying to help him save face as well. Like what you mentioned before, where she's like, this instinctual thing popped up. Well, I got to defend my man, you know? Here we are. Connor had a decent season 3. He was involved in a lot of fun stuff. Who are we going to talk about next time, Mandy?
We are going to talk about Greg the Egg, season 3. And I'm really looking forward to it. He doesn't have huge parts to play, but he has very key, crucial moments where he is in the mix.
Pretty awesome. Well, always great talking to you about Succession. I guess we'll see you next time.
And thank you for watching or listening. Goodbye.
This has been HBO's Succession, an analysis of a toxic family system.